Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful occasion to honor Chief Justice Rose Elizabeth Byrd, 38 years since she left the court. Today's unveiling of the Rose Elizabeth Byrd Justice for All Plaza is long overdue. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Senator Steve Glazer. I had the pleasure and honor of working for Chief Justice Byrd as her spokesperson during her retention election in 1985 and 86. We are here in a very, very beautiful place. This is the World Peace Rose Garden, and I wanted to share a little information about this place and the causes in which this whole area has been created. There's only 9 World Peace Rose Gardens in the world. This is one of those 9. And quoting from their website, there is only one language spoken in our World Peace Rose Garden: love. International World Peace Rose Gardens transform ordinary public spaces into vibrant, beautiful places of peace and inspiration. The gardens are living reminders that peace begins within the hearts of each one of us, in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions. Every day, each one of us has an opportunity to make the world a better place. Everyone can make a difference. So if you're just listening to this in some remote place, this is in Capitol Park here by the state capitol. It's a beautiful place, not just of roses, but of inspirational messages throughout. And I want to thank Sylvia Villalobos and TJ David, who's here. Raise your hands. Where are you? They're the founders of the Rose Garden, so thank you. Thank you very much. So in one's life, maybe not for you, but for me, there's a little box that's called unfinished business. And we all have different things in that box. But what we're doing today is part of my unfinished business. There are some here today who have known Chief Justice Byrd much longer than I have. I got to know her for a brief 15 months leading up to her reconfirmation election in 1986. It was a front row seat to much of what was transpiring outside the courtroom. We interacted daily, certainly weekly, many times in a week, and I got to know her quite a bit, and all the challenges that she faced as the first woman Chief Justice of California. So back to that unfinished box. It was my hope that time and perspective would allow for better understanding of her courageous service and the integrity of her work in upholding the Constitution and the rule of law. We are here today because that time has finally come. The judicial branch can be very easily misunderstood in terms of the role it plays in our democracy. As many of those here know quite well, it's not the job of a judge to put their finger to the winds and make what would be viewed as popular choices. Instead, it's to have standards of fairness and justice under our body of law. Rose Byrd understood that duty very well. I was with her on election night in 1986, and at the end, we're going to play a little clip from that night. And I don't believe I don't believe that the chief had any regrets about her service on the court and all the decisions that she made. In particular, she was very proud of her accomplishments for women. And although she got a lot of scars for breaking many glass ceilings, she felt, and I know we're going to hear from Steve Buell in a few minutes, and we talked about this in our podcast, she felt it was very important for her to be a great role model for women in government and in the legal profession. I had a chance to talk to Governor Jerry Brown just last week, and he said this about Chief Justice Byrd. He said she brought a different life experience. I think her mother was a working class mom, a single mom. She identified with people of lesser means. She did not draw herself into the elite, even though she could have, and he referenced her background in law at Stanford and at Berkeley. He said she was on the outside. She could identify with the underdog. And he concluded by saying she was a true public servant in the absolute best sense of the word. Her values were correct. I want to thank Louis I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. Cespedes, who's here, the Secretary of the Judicial Appointments Unit for Governor Newsom. And I wanted to thank you for working so hard to find qualified people who represent the diversity of our state, not simply people who fit into the narrow mold of lawyers who sat on the bench in earlier times, the kind of experience that Rose Bird experienced. Finally, I want to thank all the friends and colleagues of Rose Bird who have come here to celebrate this moment. It's a treat to see you from 30, 40 years ago. For many of you, the last time I was able to see you. So we have a lineup of wonderful speakers here to share their thoughts about her service. There are a few people that know what it's like to be Chief Justice of California, and we have two of them here who have that unique perspective. I know, and I think Steve Buell may speak to how committed Chief Justice Bird was to the running of the courts, not just the decisions of the court, but the task of making sure it was working up and down the state of California to ensure people had access to justice for all. And that's a hard part of the job that many people don't really know. But let me invite up first to speak to you the current Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, Patricia Guerrero.
Good morning, everybody. I'm humbled and honored to be here today for this special event to participate in dedicating the Chief Justice Rose Elizabeth Bird Justice for All Plaza. Thank you, Senator Glazer, for inviting me to be a part of today's commemoration of Chief Justice Bird. I'm delighted to be here for this wonderful celebration, which I think everyone here can agree is long overdue. Senator, it is your persistent efforts alongside many of your legislative colleagues and many of the people here today that have brought us together to honor a trailblazer in our state's judicial history. As you all know, Chief Justice Bird achieved many notable firsts at every stage of her career in public service. She broke barriers to become the first female appointed to the California Supreme Court and the first female Chief Justice at the remarkable age of 40. So I feel like such a slacker. It's a deep honor to be here as California's 29th Chief Justice to pay tribute to her for the path that she paved for so many others who hope to pursue leadership positions in the legal profession, both attorneys and judges. And I'm happy to be here with my immediate predecessor, Chief Justice Tani Kantil-Sakaue, who's also here to speak on this special occasion. Both of us know, I think, what it's like to walk the esteemed hallways of the California Supreme Court, lined with the photos of prior Chief Justices, and to feel the incredible sense of pride in seeing the long line of framed male faces finally, I wouldn't say interrupted, I guess the right word is complimented by the first female Chief Justice with a brilliant smile. Much has been said and written of Chief Justice Bird and her decade-long leadership of the court from 1977 to 1987. The time that I have here is too short to truly capture all aspects of her life and work. I would primarily like to highlight her character, strength, and courage, and her dedication to protecting the rights of all individuals under the law. In March 2000, when the Supreme Court of California convened for a special session to honor Chief Justice Bird, many friends and colleagues spoke of her accomplishments as well as her character. Justice Joyce Kennard described her as a person of intellectual brilliance and extraordinary courage. Justice Cruz Reynoso spoke of her abiding faith that the law should protect all, the weak and the strong. Chief Justice Ronald George spoke of the many improvements in the court's operating procedures that were overseen by Chief Justice Bird during her tenure including efforts to modernize and streamline California's court system and her commitment to the administration of justice. Chief Justice Byrd's leadership of the Judicial Council, which is the policymaking body for our state court system, also laid the foundation for ongoing efforts to eliminate bias and promote equality and fairness for all individuals in the judicial branch. In one of her last official acts before leaving office, Chief Justice Byrd created the Advisory Committee on Gender Bias in the Courts. The important work of that committee continued under the stewardship of Chief Justice Malcolm Lucas, leading to a comprehensive framework to eliminate gender bias within our state courts and promote diversity and inclusion, efforts that we remain committed to today. I highlight these notable accomplishments of our former Chief Justice, recognizing that those who knew her well can add much more to this tribute. Although I never had the opportunity to meet Chief Justice Byrd, I'm inspired by her as so many others are. Chief Justice Byrd leaves a long-lasting legacy as a compassionate, dedicated public servant and a trailblazer whose important impact continues to resonate within our judicial system and throughout the state. It's a privilege to be here with all of you to remember and commemorate her. Thank you.
Well, we're honored to have a second Chief Justice with us today, who has a very long bio. And I always feel like the most important thing of her bio was always left out. And that's that she went to high school just down the street here at McClatchy High. She was an underclassman to me at the high school. I don't think I really even knew her. I passed her in the hallway. For those who don't know, I joke with our Michael Drake, the president of the University of California, who also a McClatchy graduate, that they don't mention that legacy of his. And of course, Javier Becerra, was he in your class? 1 year up, the Attorney General from McClatchy. So she's had a great underpinning for her life and career. Let's please welcome our former Chief Justice, Tani Cantil-Sakayui.
Thank you, Senator Glazer. Thank you, Chief Justice of California, our 29th Chief. It is truly an honor to be here and a pleasure to speak about Chief Justice Rose Byrd. But I want to set the stage. 38 years ago, the legal profession was 99.9% male and Caucasian, let alone the courthouse and the courtroom. 38 years ago, I was a young lawyer being mentored by Luis Cespedes in Sacramento. In 1984, the talk began about the retention election of Chief Justice Rose Byrd. This was a time, mind you, when women were not even wearing pants in the courthouse, and where there were only 3 female judges on the entire Sacramento Superior Court. And so women were not often seen in the well as a trial attorney, let alone an appellate podium, or even on the appellate courts, except one on the 3rd District Court of Appeal. So the timing of having a female chief who was the first of firsts in governance in the executive branch and leading and heading the 3rd branch of government in California, still the largest law-trained judiciary in the United States, was phenomenal. Was truly, in many ways, depending on your perspective, something of beauty and awe and something of a curiosity. And here she was, true to her principles, around a safe table. As Chief Justice Guerrero will say, the Chief's chambers is a sacred space. It is where 7 people dedicated to the law and its interpretation are not pulling any punches about what we think the law means. And to the benefit of California and to the benefit of our democracy, that's what you want. You want 7 independent voices speaking about the meaning of the interpretation and application of this rule to all of California, which is unlike any other state. And so it's a safe space where we encourage each other to disagree and where we know the dissenting opinions of today, the concurring opinions of today, separate from the majority opinions of today, very often turn out to be the bellwether opinions of the future. And we know this in the work we do because the law is a reflection of our society. And Chief Justice Rose Bird, with her colleagues, lived that to the fullest extent. And as Senator Glazer has said, sometimes the judiciary is misunderstood. And for that, judicial and judiciaries are under attack. But we're one of the most transparent branches in all three branches of government. Come listen to an oral argument, I dare you. They're long, they're technical, they're quiet, but they're also backed by hundreds of pages of briefing by lawyers who are advocates. The decisions of the Supreme Court do not come out of thin air. They come out of advocacy, right, Mr. Sugarman? They come out of people who tell us an interpretation of the law that we need to hear. So Justice Rose Bird was a woman out of time, a leader out of time, a leader out of history for standing true to what she believed in her cases, that can be read, that is transparent. And we expect reasonable minds to disagree, but nonetheless, as mentioned here, she regretted none of it. In the face of it all, she held true to what she believed was the interpretation in cases that serve as our state's papers. And so she had it terrifically hard as the first. The first is hard. The first breaks glass ceilings, but the first continues to have to prove herself in every single endeavor, in every single case. And she has been an inspiration to all of us. In our court, Rose Bird's memory is everywhere. I know that Chief Justice Guerrero will attest that as soon as you walk out of the inner sanctum of the Chief's chambers, you've come face to face with the wall of the 29 prior chiefs. And there is the glowing photo of Chief Justice Rose Bird, always a reminder of the privilege of being there and the safe space and our duty to the law, not to public opinion and not to the wind or to the scale. So when I talk about Chief Justice Rose Bird, I know that in our court, in the past court, in today's court, there are people who still there who remember her fondly. And also, there was at one point and still may be the resurrection of her desk and her office created in the library for people in the public to come see. And just about 5 or 6 years ago, her papers were discovered and now are in the Berkeley Library, available for, again, history and review. So those of us who come behind Chief Justice Rose Bird know that we stand on her shoulders and that she serves as a reminder of the need to be true to the rule of law and not to public opinion. So it's an honor to be here to speak to her and to be part of this dedication. Thank you.
Thank you to both chiefs for such wonderful words. There's nobody that knew Rose Bird better than the next person I'm going to introduce today. He may tell his story of how we first met Chief Justice Bird when he was at Stanford. But most importantly, when she was selected to be the first woman member of a governor's cabinet, she asked Steve Buell to come and be by her side as her chief of staff. And when Governor Brown appointed her as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in 1977, it was no surprise that she asked Steve Buell to come be by her side as her chief of staff. Please welcome Steve Buell.
Oops, sorry. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Buell. I'm an attorney by trade, and I'm here today because I had the good fortune to have known and worked with Rose Elizabeth Bird. As Steve just mentioned, I served as her chief deputy when she became the first woman cabinet secretary in California history, and then she asked me, as Steve mentioned, to serve as her chief of staff at the California Supreme Court when Governor Brown appointed her as the first woman chief justice in 1977. I'm most appreciative that Senator Glazer has asked me to speak on this really special occasion. Thanks to his efforts, this beautiful Rose Garden Plaza honoring Chief Justice Bird has become a reality. as you can see as you look around. I think it wonderful and most fitting that former Chief Justice Tani Cantil Sagale and current Chief Justice Patricia Guerrero are here today to celebrate Chief Justice Byrd's legacy. I feel certain that the spirit of Chief Justice Byrd is somewhere applauding the two of them, as well as celebrating the increasing number of women jurists and women attorneys in California and throughout the United States. Today, a majority of the justices serving on the California Supreme Court are women. And indeed. And 4 of the justices serving on the United States Supreme Court are women. This is as it should be. More work still needs to be done, however, to continue this beneficial trend of inclusion. As I was preparing my remarks, I knew I could talk at length about the many well-reasoned and well-written opinions that Chief Justice Byrd authored during her decade on the California Supreme Court. Likewise, I could speak about the many innovative administrative initiatives, as was alluded to by the Chief Justices, that she brought to her role as chairperson of the California Judicial Council, which that's the policy-making body of the California courts, which compose the largest state court system in the nation. But that would divert me from speaking to you more directly about the remarkably intelligent, caring, ethical, and dedicated public servant that Rose was. I saw these core values manifested in everything she did. Let me tell you 4 quick stories that show the strength of character that Rose demonstrated on her path to becoming Chief Justice. First, she was a talented legal advocate. When I met Rose, she was the first woman deputy public defender in Santa Clara County, where she honed her skills as a formidable trial attorney. She also created and headed the appellate practice department there and made many appearances before the California appellate courts. Second, she was an innovator. Rose teamed with Stanford Law School and taught classes there as part of a new clinical program that gave law students the unique opportunity to handle cases in the Santa Clara County courts. This popular program was later adopted by other law schools. Third, she was a dedicated public servant. Her excellence as a trial and appellate attorney was matched by her lifelong interest in the ability of legislation to address important public issues. In 1974, she volunteered to work on the gubernatorial campaign of then Secretary of State Jerry Brown. He was impressed with Rose's skills and abilities. Upon his election, he appointed her as the first woman cabinet member in California history. Fourth, she was a talented administrator and compassionate leader. As the Secretary of the State Agriculture and Services Agency, she oversaw the administration of many widely varied departments, including the Department of Food and Agriculture. It was then that Governor Brown chose Rose to draft the groundbreaking legislation known as the California Agricultural Labor Relations Act, and to shepherd its passage through the state legislature. Those of you here today may already know that this act created a landmark statute in United States labor law. It established the right to collective bargaining for farm workers in California, a first in U.S. history. In addition, Rose helped bring about the banning of an agricultural tool which had caused debilitating long-term health problems for a multitude of California farm workers. Then in early 1977, Governor Brown appointed Rose to become the Chief Justice of California, which, as you know from the previous speakers, made her the first woman to serve on the state's highest court. And she would preside over that court for the next 10 years. It was indeed a history-making appointment. There is a common thread here in all of the remarkable firsts that Rose Elizabeth Byrd achieved. She brought with her strong work habits and an equally strong set of ethical principles. As Chief Justice, she adhered to the bedrock concept that the judicial branch of government must be and must always remain independent of the political and partisan forces that are brought to bear on the executive and legislative branches of government. Her focus was always on making sure that the work of the California Supreme Court remained guided by the Constitution and the rule of law. Throughout her decade at California's highest court, Chief Justice Byrd never wavered in her adherence to these principles. She never let the political winds that often blew deter her or distract her from doing so. That took courage. And courage is one of the many qualities that characterized Rose. She once shared with me a Latin proverb that helped guide her through tough times. ad astra per aspera, or through the thorns to the stars. Here are some of Rosa's own words from a speech that she delivered in January 1987, shortly before her tenure at the Supreme Court ended. I quote, "We must continually dedicate ourselves to ensuring a system of justice that is truly blindfolded, with scales and balance. The journey toward that goal never really ends. It is a process of renewal that finds its strength in our reaffirmation of faith in its values," end quote. On a personal note, I could not have asked for a better mentor and friend than Rosa Elizabeth Byrd. May her strength of character and dedication to our democracy governed by the rule of law remain an inspiration to future generations of jurists and attorneys alike. I paused for a moment. And may the many firsts that she achieved during her life shall continue to serve as an inspiration to women and to men in the law everywhere. Thank you all for being here today to honor Rosa's lasting legacy in this beautiful new plaza.
Well, part of what made this event happen today was the incredible support that I received by California women lawyers who supported this effort when we began it many, many years ago. And I'm pleased that we have the president of the Sacramento chapter of California Women Lawyers here, Catherine Miola, and we invite her to speak to you today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of two organizations, so if you just bear with me. I am Catherine Miola. I'm the president of Women Lawyers of Sacramento, and on behalf of the California Women Lawyers, I am honored to be here for the unveiling of this plaque dedicating the Chief Justice Rose Elizabeth Byrd Justice for All Plaza here at the California State Capitol World Peace Rose Garden. CWL President Jody Clasadol sends her regrets that she could not be here personally, but she is pleased that the CWL Foundation was able to contribute to this event. CWL will be sending a check for $1,500 to support the installation of the plaque honoring Chief Justice Byrd. Chief Justice Rose Byrd was one of the pioneers who founded California Women Lawyers in 1974. In 1966, as you heard today, she became the first female deputy public defender in Santa Clara County, where she rose to become the chief of the appellate division. During this time, she also taught at Stanford Law School, and she was the first woman to serve in the California cabinet as the Secretary of Agriculture appointed by Governor Brown in 1975. Just 12 years after graduating law school, she was appointed the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court in 1977, again by Governor Brown. Chief Justice Rose Byrd stood strong for her convictions and continued to champion the underdog throughout her career. Even after leaving the Supreme Court in 1986, when voters, angry at her opposition to the death penalty, declined to re-elect her and two other justices, she volunteered for the East Palo Alto Community Law Project, a program designed to meet the legal needs of the community while also providing legal training to law students. CWL has been proud to be involved in this effort, which has been years in the making, to honor Chief Justice Rose Byrd, and we hope that those who visit this plaza will remember her contributions to the law and honor her legacy for many years to come. Thank you. And then also, on behalf of Women Lawyers of Sacramento, I wanted to talk to you about three things today. Okay. First is California Sunshine Laws, organizations like Women Lawyers of Sacramento and California Women Lawyers, and personal transparency and honesty. The transparency and open government laws that constitute California's Sunshine Laws are cornerstones of a strong democracy. Laws such as the Brown Act and Public Records Act confer the public's right of access to information in government. The public has a constitutional right to notice and access to any meeting of a legislative body and to provide public comment. The public also has a right to obtain documents created by the legislative agency. The overriding purpose of these laws is transparency and open government, which build and foster trust in the elected officials who lead government agencies. These laws are referred to California's Sunshine's laws, reminding me of the famous quote by United States Supreme Court Louis Brandeis, "Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants." The same concept of transparency to build trust drives organizations like California Women Lawyers and Women Lawyers of Sacramento and other affiliate bar association organizations to bring to light conversations surrounding the unique challenges women face in the legal profession and in broader context. WLS was founded more than 60 years ago and exists today to support and encourage every woman lawyer in her career aspirations and to promote a society that places no limits on where women's skills and talents can take her. This year, WLS and Wiley Emanuel co-hosted an event featuring Judge Stockdale Coleman, who spoke about the challenges of her path to the bench. For International Women's Day, WLS and the Sacramento Bar Association co-hosted an event with a fantastic panel of speakers across the legal community, moderated by Justice Mesiwala, featuring quotes like, "Nothing can dim the light that shines from within," Dr. Maya Angelou, "Create your legacy and pass the baton," Billie Jean King, "This is who I am," Oprah Winfrey, "I don't want to be thought of as the girl who was shot by the Taliban, but as the girl who fought for education," Malala Yousafzai, and "To Though Nine Self Be True," Dolly Parton. Finally, WLS, and I promise this will all make sense. Finally, WLS brought to light the Women in the Workplace 2023 report, which detailed the microaggressions women face in the workplace, such as others get credit for my ideas, my judgment is questioned, others comment on my appearance and or my emotional state, I have been mistaken for someone more junior, I have been confused with someone else with the same race or nationality. These concepts bring to mind the late Chief Justice Rose Bird and her honesty and transparency. Chief Justice Rose Bird was a woman of many firsts, as you heard today, the first female law clerk of the Nevada Supreme Court, the first female deputy public defender in Santa Clara County, the first woman to serve in the California State Cabinet, and of course, the first female Chief Justice of California. While accomplishing these feats, she was honest in her opinions and had the courage to call out criticisms that were based on sexism, bigotry, and misogynistic views. Chief Justice Rose Bird's bravery reminds me of two of my heroes, Harry Potter and Justice Duarte. So first, Harry Potter. For those who are not Harry Potter fans, early in his wizarding career, Harry had to defeat Bogarts, a scary wraith-like creature, similar to a Dementor, but the difference is that Bogarts are defeated by laughter. Harry had to point his wand and cast a spell called Ridiculous to make them disappear. If only it were as simple as that to make sexist and misogynistic views disappear. Chief Justice Rose Bird's bravery also reminded me of Justice Duarte, who has served as WLS's judicial liaison for many years and has provided her support and her time both invaluable for our organization. Justice Duarte's advice is to use humor to dispel those instances when, for example, you are mistaken for the court clerk or the interpreter rather than the judge hearing the case. We will never stop sexist or misogynistic attacks from happening altogether or control negative responses to a strong female in a leadership role. But I believe what we can do is model how women should be treated. This means saying something in the moment when necessary and appropriate, being an ally, exposing the criticism for what it is, being a safe space, a safe person women can report to and discuss negative experiences they have had, and stand up for women when you see that something is not right, just as Chief Justice Rose Bird did. It is for this reason that WLS is a proud sponsor of this event today, and in honoring Chief Justice Rose Bird for all of her accomplishments and her honesty and transparency throughout her career. It is our hope that the continued sunlight by those comments will disinfect sexism and misogyny. And in closing, I encourage women lawyers to be transparent in the way that they approach the law, with just enough humor that we are not judged harshly with our honesty. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this plaza would not have happened today without the support of the Legislative Women's Caucus. Their support and the support of our legislative colleagues allowed this event to take place today. And leading the California Women's Caucus Legislative Women's Caucus is Senator Nancy Skinner, and we invite her to come speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Senator Glazer, and thank you for your work to cause us to be here today to do this commemoration. And I appreciate seeing our former female Chief Justice, Tani, and our current Chief Justice, Patricia, and all of you. I was delayed because I was in a hearing of our Energy Committee that was doing oversight on a bill that I authored last year, SB X12 or 21 something. Anyway, it had a crazy name. And it was around giving the state the ability to gather the data to see whether oil companies are manipulating prices, causing price gouging, for why we have ridiculously high gasoline prices. And as you notice, I'm sure now, gasoline is above $5 a gallon and higher than anywhere else in the country. And there's always this talk about, oh, it's California's fees and taxes. And of course, the data that was presented to us today shows that that's not the case. But what really came out is that because there's only 4 companies that have the market on refined products in California, they can control those prices, and they get a great increase in profit when there is price spikes like we are experiencing now. And of course, you know, as many corporations, they want profit. So I bring that up because Rose Bird, beyond all the glass ceiling issues that she shattered, which I know because you've all heard already, so I won't repeat them, she was someone who spoke truth to power. She was clear about what oil companies were doing, big ag. She was clear about her support against the death penalty and various other things that she felt were appropriate. She was a protector of farm workers and one of the persons that worked hard to get rid of the short hoe, which was crippling farm workers and which, of course, the ag business did not appreciate. And oil, ag, and other corporate interests did not appreciate Rose Bird because she was effective and her court made rulings that they did not like. So what did they do? They manipulated the public's concerns about the death penalty and this fear of being soft on crime and took her out. So they took out this woman that spoke truth to power, that broke all of these glass ceilings, that, according to her colleague, Justice Cruz Reynoso, because one of the things that was said about her was that she created tumult on the court, that the court justices did not get along. And Reynoso said later, the press reported at the time that there were tensions among the justices. He said, so since I knew and respected each justice, I was determined, once I got on the court, so he was appointed after Rose Bird, to bring peace to the court. However, when I arrived, I looked in vain for the reported friction. Rather, I found vigorous but respectful agreement and disagreement among the justices. So Cruz Reynoso himself destroyed that myth. But as has been portrayed, and our last speaker talked about this a lot, that it was easier to discredit Rose Bird than it is for a man than if she were a man. That it would have been harder to use the same kinds of ways they went after her. And of course, they used words that all strong and powerful women face. Words that criticize women, but that are not used, by and large, against men. Words like too aggressive, shrill, prickly, toxic, hard to get along with, unrelenting in her positions. So we know many of those are, that man is a strong leader. But as a woman, no, we can't do that. And that is still true today. And I think the tragedy of Rose Bird's, the defeat that she experienced, is it chilled. It put a big chill on a lot of women and how they then should function going forward. And I think it affected women's leadership a great deal. And that is a serious tragedy. She was brilliant. She was courageous. She broke down the doors of Sacramento's old boys club. And at that time, less than now, women were not in the room where it happens. They were not in the room where big decisions were being made. We're in the room more now. Are we at the top? Are we in the C-suite all the time? Are we the CEOs? Fortunately, we are the Chief Justices. But are we the governor? Not yet. Are we the president? Not yet. So while we're in the room more than we were then, we're still not where we should be. But she walked into those rooms and she started making some of the biggest decisions of our times. She protected our environmental and our consumer laws. She protected low-wage workers. She created an advisory committee on gender bias in the courts. We're talking the early 70s, the first such committee in the U.S. She battled the unfairness and cruelty of the death penalty, as I referenced already. And, of course, because of the powerful enemies that she made, she notched another first, which was becoming the first California Supreme Court justice to be taken out of office, which is a low point in our state's history, and a low point, I think, in the ability for women to advance and for women to feel that they could express and be the kind of courageous leader that she was. And I don't know, an apology since I was not here, how many of you all talked about what happened after she left the position, briefly. So, it was very tragic. She could not get a position with any law firm. She became a political pariah. She eventually was a volunteer at a food kitchen and at an East Palo Alto Community Law Center. But thankfully, we are going to protect and preserve her legacy. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And the Women's Caucus does also, which is why we strongly contributed this. And we need to do similarly for all of the women that have spoken truth to power, so that all of the women that follow us and all the young girls do not fear and do not suffer the same consequences, because it should be a level playing field, and it is not yet. So now Justice Byrd's extraordinary legacy will be forever imprinted on the plaza of this beautiful rose garden, and I hope that it is properly portrayed in all the curriculums in our schools and elsewhere so that everyone can learn about it. And I thank you all for being here and joining in this honor.
Thank you, Senator Skinner, for your powerful words today. As we conclude our ceremony today, I wanted to share with you a little history. We were able to find remarks that Chief Justice Byrd made on that eventful evening, November of 1986. And we've selected 3 short clips to share with you today that I think you will appreciate. So I want to cue our sound person in the back. And at the conclusion of that, we're going to unveil the plaques here. If I can ask both Chief Justices to join me as we unveil the plaques here in the plaza. This is from a television news broadcast that night, which broadcast her whole speech, which was 7 minutes long. We're not going to play that today. But if you're into
Steve McElhatton and Wendy DeCoe. Let me first address an issue which was raised with me earlier, and a question that I suspect is on the minds of some of the press as well. How am I taking this? My answer is, just like a man. The voters of California have spoken, and I accept their verdict. And I accept it with equanimity, because when I entered this chamber of justice, I entered through those doors. I donned the robes of this office, and I took the oath of office and the oath of office guaranteed to the people of this state that I would well and faithfully discharge my duties and that I would uphold and defend the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I have tried during the years I have been in this position to do my very best to fulfill that obligation and responsibility to the people of this state. And so, this evening, I accept this decision, and I accept it with a conscience at peace. Your trials. We need to continue this dialogue with the people of California to let them know that the rule of law has to apply not only to the weak, but to the powerful, and not only to the popular, but to the unpopular as well. And only you can continue that dialogue with the people. And it's important that we have it, because as Thomas Jefferson said at the founding of our nation, and as he instructed us, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And I believe eternal vigilance is also the price of true justice.
There we have it. I want to thank you all for participating in this important ceremony here today. We did create an excerpt of her final speech as Chief Justice. It's in the back for anyone who would like a copy of that. On this journey, which was a 5 or 6 year journey to be here at this place, I was joined the last 2 years by a special member of my staff, Shoshana Levy, and I want to give her a appreciation, some roses from her to her. Say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If I could invite you all, the Chief Justices, to come join me as we unveil the plaques honoring Plaza for Chief Justice Rose Elizabeth Byrd.